You are heating your neighborhood, not your living room, your neighborhood. Right now, warm air is pouring out of the gaps around your doors and windows, into your yard, into the street, gone forever. The U.S. Department of Energy found that air leaks like these account for between 25% and 40% of the energy used for heating and cooling in a typical residence. That's not a rounding error. That's a third of your heating bill, leaking out through cracks the width of a pencil. HVAC companies want to sell you a $9,000 furnace upgrade. Window companies want to sell you $15,000 in new windows. But the fix for most of that leak is a $7 strip of rubber you install in about 20 minutes with a pair of scissors. But before I show you the fix, you need to understand how we got tricked in the first place. Because this isn't a coincidence. This is design. For the last 30 years, the home efficiency conversation has been hijacked by the biggest possible price tag. You've been told the answer is new windows, new furnaces, new insulation contracts. Companies that profit off five-figure renovations have a financial incentive to make you believe the only real fix is the most expensive fix. So they talk about R values, U factors, double pane glass, and they bury the boring, cheap stuff at the bottom of the brochure if they mention it at all. That's not engineering, that's conditioning. You've been trained to think bigger spend equals bigger result. But the Department of Energy's own data says otherwise. About 20% of air infiltration happens through openings in your windows, doors, and skylights, and sealing those gaps with weather stripping and caulk can produce potential energy savings ranging from 5% to 30% per year. That's not a new furnace, that's not new glass, that's rubber and foam closing a gap. The actual physics here requires one concept. Air doesn't care how good your furnace is if there's a hole for it to escape through. You can have the most efficient heating system on the planet, and if there's a quarter-inch gap around your front door, you're paying to heat your driveway. The fix isn't a bigger heat source, it's stopping the leak. That requires exactly one material and one tool you already own. Here's exactly what to buy. The product is called D-Seal Weatherstripping, and the brand to look for is Frost King. You'll find it at Home Depot, Lowe's, or on Amazon. It's a roll of dense EPDM rubber, shaped like the letter D in cross-section, with an adhesive backing on one side. A 17-foot roll runs about $7 to $11 depending on the gap size you need. That one roll is enough to seal an entire standard door, frame and all. Here's why it works. EPDM, ethylene propylene diene monomer, is a synthetic rubber that compresses under pressure and springs back to its original shape every time. When you close your door, the rubber squeezes flat and fills the gap completely. When you open it, it pops back to full size, ready to seal again. It does this tens of thousands of times without cracking because the molecular structure resists UV breakdown and temperature swings far better than the cheap foam strips sold next to it on the shelf. The second thing you need is a tube of acrylic latex caulk with silicone sold under brands like DAP or GE at any hardware store for $4 to $6. This handles the gaps that don't move, the seams between your window frame and the wall, the corners where two pieces of trim meet. Caulk fills and hardens. Weatherstrip compresses and flexes. You need both because some gaps move and some don't, and using the wrong one in the wrong place is why most people's sealing jobs fail within a year. Total cost for a typical door and two windows, under $20. Physics doesn't negotiate on this one. A sealed gap stops air movement. That's not a theory, that's basic thermodynamics. Here's exactly how to do this. Start with the test. On a cold or windy day, hold a lit candle or a lit incense stick near the edges of your doors and windows. Where the flame flickers or bends sideways, that's an active air leak. Mark those spots with a pencil or painter's tape. Most homes find their worst leaks around the front door, the attic hatch, and any window that hasn't been opened in years. For doors, start at the top. Cut the D-Seal strip to length using regular household scissors. Peel back about 2 inches of the adhesive backing. Press the rubber bead against the door frame so that when the door closes, the bead compresses against the door's edge. Work your way down a few inches at a time, peeling and pressing as you go. Don't stretch the strip as you apply it. Let it lie naturally, or it'll pull away from the frame within weeks. Here's the insider rule almost everybody skips. Close the door before the adhesive fully sets and let it sit closed for 10 minutes. This forces the rubber into the exact compression position it'll hold for years instead of guessing at the gap by eye. Skip this step and you'll end up with a strip that's either too loose to seal or too tight to let the door close properly. For windows, the same D-Seal strip goes around the sash where it meets the frame on the side that gets pressure when the window is latched shut. For the gaps that don't move, the seam between your window trim and the drywall, the corner of your baseboard near an exterior wall, run a thin, steady bead of caulk and smooth it with a wet finger. Let the caulk cure for 24 hours before exposing it to extreme temperatures. The weather stripping is functional the moment you close the door. Here's the honest timeline. You won't see this on a bill instantly. Heating bills are monthly and weather varies week to week, but homeowners typically notice the physical difference immediately, fewer drafts at floor level. The door doesn't feel cold to stand near anymore. The Department of Energy states plainly that sealing these leaks can save homeowners as much as 20% a year on heating and cooling expenses. On a typical $2,000 annual energy bill, that's roughly $400 back in your pocket every single year for a project that cost you $20 and an afternoon. Not instant, but permanent, and it compounds every winter you leave it in place. You might be wondering, won't sealing my house too tightly cause mold, condensation, or bad indoor air? This is the fear the renovation industry leans on hardest, and it deserves a straight answer. The Department of Energy's own air sealing fact sheet directly addresses this. Properly air sealing the gaps around doors and windows doesn't suffocate your house. It eliminates uncontrolled leaks, while your home's intentional ventilation, your bathroom fans, kitchen exhaust, and HVAC system continue working exactly as designed. In fact, the agency notes that uncontrolled gaps are what cause moisture problems in the first place. In cold climates, gaps in the interior walls allow moisture from warm indoor air to enter wall cavities and attics, where it condenses on cold surfaces and leads to structural damage. The random gap around your door isn't protecting your house from moisture, it's actively creating the conditions for it. A targeted door and window seal, at the level we're talking about here, a $7 strip of rubber and a tube of caulk, isn't anywhere close to the level of airtightness that requires mechanical ventilation planning. That's a concern for whole house spray foam jobs, sealing a structure to near zero air exchange. You're closing a 1/4-inch gap around a door. Your house will still breathe exactly as much as it needs to. What actually damages your home over time isn't a sealed door. It's the moisture-laden warm air escaping through uncontrolled gaps, hitting cold surfaces inside your walls, and condensing there for years without anyone noticing until the drywall is already rotted. The seal isn't the risk, the gap was. Let's run the numbers one more time. The average American household spends $2,000 a year on energy, and the Department of Energy estimates $200 to $400 of that is wasted every year on drafts and air leaks alone. Multiply that across the roughly 130 million households in this country, and you're looking at tens of billions of dollars a year leaking out of front doors and window frames every single winter, forever, unless something changes. The home improvement industry would love to sell you a $15,000 window replacement to fix that, and for severely outdated windows, that conversation has its place. But for the actual air leak, the thing responsible for 1/4 to 40% of your heating loss, the fix costs $7 to $20 and takes an afternoon. A $7 strip of rubber that permanently solves the problem a furnace company is hoping you pay $9,000 to fix is not a business model. It's a business ending. If this saved you money, hit the like button. It tells the algorithm to show this video to other people getting ripped off by their own front door. And if you want the next material science trick that exposes another household markup, the video on your screen right now shows you exactly that. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.